Hello and welcome to the Hooked on Health podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sean Lorton, and I'm grateful to be joined today by Marc Labb, licensed mental health counselor.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of fun things to talk about today. So,
So,
Marc, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your background and your history and what got you into mental health counseling.
right. So, kind of a unique story. I think it's important to start off by saying I'm a hockey player. First and foremost, that's what kind of propelled me through my life. I arrived at college, sophomore year, had a meeting with my advisor, and she said, "So what are you gonna major in, Mark?" And I said, "Well, I'm here to play hockey." And she said, "That's great, but you need to focus on some academics here." And I'm like, "Okay." She's like, "Let's take a look at your let's take at your look at your classes." So she noticed I got a particularly good grade in psychology, and she said, "Well, what about psychology, Mark?" And I said, "Will this professor be teaching more classes? Because I really like her." She said, "Absolutely." So I said, "Let it ride." So I just started studying psychology and found out that it was quite interesting. Behavior patterns was really something that I was drawn to. And that was the birth of my experience.
That's cool. So it was really that that one professor, that kind of drove.
It was the professor, and then it became my interest in my kind of insight into the field that opened up my eyes. When I played hockey, I was never the most talented kid on the team. Never the most talented kid on the team, but I was always voted a captain on all my teams. High school, and then when I went to prep school, and then in college. It was because I found out that I was good at extracting the top potential out of all the kids on the team. So that's how I kind of transitioned that into my mental health profession. I really feel like I currently understand the potential in all of my clients, and I really work towards getting that out of them and helping them improve their quality of life.
If you could kind of, and I'm sure this is probably an impossible task, but if you could kind of dumb it down to one or two things that you feel like you could attribute that, getting the most out of people to, what do you think that would be?
Can you clarify a little bit more?
Yeah. So you were elected captain, even though, you weren't the best skill player on a team,
Mm-hmm.
but you were able to get the most out of the other positions.
Right.
Right. What do you think that you were doing with your teammates that made you able to get the most out of those
For sure.
players?
For sure. So yeah, it's understanding it's understanding roles, right? I think we all, whether it's your line of work, whether it's my line of work, and working with your employees and understanding their role, right? And what they're best at. I think it's understanding people's roles, saying that if you are the most talented kid, then you're probably going to be the scorer. So it's in those moments you really need to have the finish, right? And if you are a bruiser, you have to understand you're not going to be taking the puck down the ice the whole time and dangling in between five guys and putting it top shelf, I think it's understanding the role and having my teammates focus in on what they're best at, and really just saying, stay in your lane. We understand you're going to be going and trying to do other things, but stay in your lane and focus on what you're best at, which is either the finisher, the bruiser, the playmaker, or it's something like that. So yeah, it's like that.
How do you feel like you get the best out of your clients? It's first, like, let's preface it, right? Let's talk about, you work in community-based setting, you work in outpatient. So talk to me about like who your typical client is and like what they look like, what do they do, where they at in life, and then tell me how you get the best out.
Right. So it's kind of the same model that I was doing when I was on my hockey teams. It's so typically I work with youth, adolescent boys, ages from 5 to 28 years old. And typically with that setting, you work with the families as well. And it varies case by case. But yeah, it's from a strength-based model. It's finding out what my client's strengths are and just honing in on that. It's focusing in on that. It's showing them when they don't feel like they have anything that they're good at. Typically it's probably video games. But in other realms, it could be problem solving with regards to those video games, or it could be resiliency. So focusing in on my client's strengths and really just showing them, having them first believe in themselves. Because if they don't believe in themselves, it's going to be a tough battle, but helping them highlight that they do have strengths and then focusing on those strengths to get the best out of that client,
Now, how do they present to you in the first place? What do they come to you for?
A couple of frequent issues that I support my clients with would be social issues, would be school issues, self-esteem issues, issues in communicating with their parents, issues with their parents communicating with them. Yeah.
All those sort of things.
All those sort of things.
Let's talk about the farm.
Yeah.
So are you treating those kids at the farm too, or is that more like in an outpatient kind of setting?
So it is an outpatient setting. So I work at Cultivate Care Farms in Bolton, and I also work at Bracken Hill Farms in Northborough. And yeah, it is basically like an outpatient style of therapy, except we're just on a farm. And we have the land, we have the animals, we have the earth as a medium to help with that extraction of the strength. So it's a very unique, and I would say new, but it's probably not new at all. It's just kind of now being exposed, and it's the medium that I think we're all now, or the farms are using to provide new situations, new scenarios for these kids, young men and individuals in general, to experience and explore the world. This is typically a very unorthodox setting for a lot of my clients. They're usually not familiar with farm animals or trying to pick up a chicken. But it's great experience. A kid's like, I'm not going to pick up that chicken. I am scared out of my mind. And I'm like, you are 5 times that chicken size, and that chicken is more scared of you than you are of that chicken. So why don't you go ahead and get your hands dirty? And if the kid's not gung-ho about getting in on it and just going, then there's stages. It's me picking up the chicken, him petting the chicken, him seeing that the chicken is not going to peck him. And it's just putting them in situations which we all know we're going to experience, situations that we're unfamiliar with, but it's getting them to feel comfortable being uncomfortable.
I think that's so important. We talked a little bit about, off camera, a couple weeks ago about, the importance of what the farm can do, right? And what happens on a farm. So can you talk a little bit about that from life to death, to the similarities there?
Yeah.
Share some stories of like what you've kind of gone through with some of the kids on the farm.
Yeah. Well, like you said, life and death, right? On a farm, we have a lot of that, we become pretty close with these animals. We have a cat that recently passed away, Barney. Barney was diagnosed with cancer, was given 2 weeks by a Tufts veterinarian to live. Those 2 weeks turned into 2.5 years. And this cat was in pretty rough shape, but he was still doing his thing, providing support, comfort, love. Like a 4-year-old would come and throw the cat over his shoulder and be like, I love Barney. And we'd be like, oh, Barney's fragile. Be careful. So it's just, and then eventually, Barney left. Barney decided, as I'm not all that familiar with cats, but I guess it's typical that when cats, are at the end, that they will go off and that they will die on their own, and they're not gonna put that on their owners. And that's exactly what Barney did. Barney went off into the woods, and we hadn't found him, and that was very hard for a lot of my clients to have to deal with. But a lot of unfair things happen, and we can either get caught up in the unfairness of it, or we can develop a plan and we can get through it. And that's what the staff at Cultivate has done, is we've just utilized the story. We've utilized the personal experience, to maybe help them create a narrative in their lives that they can latch onto and use. Similar to death, we have life. We recently had, I think it was 6 different goats that were impregnated and gave birth. And that was a great experience, having to bottle feed these goats, and really, they lean on us to be nurtured and supported and kept inside during the cold winter months. But yeah, it's that nurturing of something that is relying on you, that I also think is very empowering for my clients as well.
Yeah, talk to me about the life parallels, like the resiliency and some of the problems that are in society today, especially with our young adults and with our kids. You and I both have kids, I think the same ages, right? So 6 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know I speak for Brooke when I say, like, we worry about our children every single day. We worry about preventing things that we can't prevent. It's probably called anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
But we worry about technology. We worry about, the future with social media and what that looks like, and with their developing brains and in their ability to pay attention to things.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me a little bit about how a farm helps with those everyday, the ADHD, the everyday behavioral problems. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Right. So, the farm is, like I said, so much happens at the farm. So much happens at the farm that is out of our control. Obviously, we didn't want to see Barney go. It's out of our control. Just like out in the world, when we have to kiss our kids goodbye to go to school, we send them off to school. We don't know what they're going to experience that day. We don't know if they're going to get bullied, if they're going to have a great experience, if they're going to have a moment of resiliency that they can lock into. But it's basically giving up that need to control, and giving up that urge to want to always be there and be in the mix, and just letting your kids find their way, find that resilience. And along those lines, yes.
Talk a lot about, and you see all the Instagram posts and stuff, and, about comfort, right? And how comfort can really kind of potentially kill drive, right? Like, what to you do you think, and what you've seen is like a good balance between comfort and discomfort?
Well, comfort has to do a lot with control, right? Comfort, yes, comfort can kill drive, right? I think what I see a lot in my clients is they're familiar with video games, right? They're familiar with screens. So that's what they want to hone in on, right? but we all know that 3 to 6 hours on a screen isn't the best for development, right? So getting these kids into situations where they're unfamiliar with, and that's why I think the farm is so beautiful, because the situations aren't familiar to them. So some of the kids are very reluctant to come to the farm at first, especially in the cold winter months. But I always encourage my clients to find ways to get through the cold, right? Whether that's movement, or whether that's building a fire, or whether that's having tools like hand warmers or something like that. So yeah, no, I'm another motto I have at the farm is, let's do dangerous things safely. Because I think that's driving here today, that was a risk.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Driving here is a risk, and I've heard clients, especially clients that are about to get their permit, like, yeah, I like to drive, but I'm not going to drive on the highway. It's like, okay, and there's difference between a country road and a highway, right? There's a medium in between there, right? There's a 2-lane road, right? That you're not driving 35. You can drive 50 or 45 on it, So a kid has it locked in where it's just like, yeah, I like driving, but I'm not driving on the highway. It's like, well, there are steps between there. We can learn to walk before we sprint, right? We don't need to necessarily go from the country road to the highway, but there's a medium in between there.
Yeah. I like that.
Yep.
Do dangerous things safely. I like that a lot.
Well, I mean, at the farm, we're chopping wood, and you can't chop wood with a dull axe.
Right.
And so, knowing that these kids are going to swing this axe, I say, you have the power factor versus the accuracy factor. If you go 90% power, your accuracy is going to go down to 10%.
Right.
Which, in my opinion, we need accuracy pretty high, right? So figuring out what the ratio is where they're going to find the most success. And then that's applicable for life, right? So yeah, dangerous things safely is a huge kind of motto I live by.
I like that. What do you see? What are like some of the most common themes that you're seeing in your clients that you work with today? Stress, disconnection, purpose, a sense, a lack of purpose, burnout.
Yeah. I would say depression. I would say depression is one of the highest symptoms I see in my clients. I think, what's my purpose? I think I see a lot of that with my clients.
And what do you tell them?
I tell them we're not on the final stages of life right now. I think it's a journey. It's a journey, and we're not being judged right now. So let's see what we're interested in. Let's see what brings us joy. Let's see what brings us happiness, and a lot of kids these days, it's instant gratification. We live in a world where you touch a screen and you're automatically used to getting some sort of response. And, knowing that delayed gratification, frustration tolerance, all part of life, that they're not easy lessons to learn. Who likes to see someone be frustrated? I mean, I can speak from my point of view. Is just like, if my son's in the next room and I hear him getting frustrated, a part of me wants to go in there and relieve him of that frustration.
Yeah.
It's just human nature. It's human instinct. But I think a lot of parents these days don't want to see their kids frustrated. And I think it's important to help them work through that frustration in that comfort zone and find ways. I was talking to someone earlier today, and they were saying, oh, like, I do so much around the house. I cook and I clean and I do this and I do that. And I told them a story this past weekend of my son and I, and how I was standing by the washing machine and I'm just putting these these little people articles of clothing are all inside out. Because kids, when they get in home, they just rip it all out and it's all inside out. And I'm just like sitting there. I'm like, this is taking so long. Why am I doing this? So I call my son over and I'm like, we're going to have a little game right now. We're going to have a little game. And he's like, what's the game? And I'm like, the game is you have those articles and I have these articles, and we're going to see who can get these clothes right side in quick enough. Right. And that helped me so much. Right. So it's thinking outside the box. Right. It's instead of just becoming overwhelmed with the fact that I have all these little people article of clothing that are all inside out, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, why do these kids always do this? It's just like, there's got to be another way. There's got to be another way I can teach my son, because it's not easy to right side in clothes, right? You got to put your arm in, grab it, pull it out, and so he was getting frustrated, and especially when you put the time factor into it and that I'm doing it and he's struggling. It's all part of the game, man. It's all
good. You kind of got a twofer there because you were frustrated doing it. Then you bring your son in so he can be equally as frustrated and feel it with you. But then then you're bonding too.
Yeah. It's the two birds. It's the two birds with one stone kind of analogy, right?
What do you think is like a good way to manage frustrations with kids? Because I think the first thing that I think about is my daughter doing her homework, and she's going through first grade right now. She's just learning how to read and how to read well. And she struggles with reading right now. Like, she's struggling a little bit. And it's so hard as a parent to see your kid like struggle, right? And then it's like, how much do you help? How much do you not help? Like, what's the answer, Mark?
Yeah, the answer is there's no answer. The answer is it is a case by case situation. And, I guess you're the only one in that moment can say, oh, I did too much that time. I need to scale it back, or maybe I need to do a little bit more. So I just think it's you got to do it, and then you got to see how that turned out, and then you got to critique a little bit. But it's mainly processing, taking it slowly, trying not to get worked up yourself. Kids are so attuned to body language, tone of voice. I mean, they're pros at it. They're pros, and they don't even know how good they are, but they're always looking at your facial expressions to see where your eyebrows are at, to see where your eyes are at, to see to hear the tone of your voice. I just think that that's so imperative, and it goes sometimes by the wayside. People are so locked in on the tasks that need to get done rather than the how those tasks get done. It's not just about checking the box to say, yeah, we did that, but rather like, how did that feel in the moment, right? How did that feel? Sorry.
So it's so funny because it's the complete opposite for work, right? Because it's like, for me, it's like, I don't care how it gets done as long as it gets done.
Exactly.
And now I'm going to put on this different hat as a dad and say like, okay, now I got to really worry about the how. And how am I showing up? And how am I letting my child struggle with the frustrations that I obviously can't do too much. I can't do too little. So what's the perfect match? Yeah, it's tough being a parent.
Yeah, there's no book. And I think I might have said this to you.
Well, if you want to read one, I'll read one.
Yeah, great. I mean, he needs a little help with that. But I don't know if I told you this the other day when we were meeting off camera. But yeah, so often I just want to grab my mom by the shirt and I just want to say, admit that it's harder being a parent now than it was back in the day. I mean, and we can go into that, my mom and I go into that all the time, and she gives me what I want, and she tells me, yes, it is harder. I think with cell phones, I think that pie chart of where we direct our attention, right? How much attention we focus on our children, focus on ourselves, work. And then when the cell phones come into play or the screens come into play, I think sometimes that section gets a little bit too much attention. But I think the way the social media, people kind of strategize how they lock us in. They're good at what they do. They're good at what they do. So it's about, putting the attention on the things that really matter the most.
Yeah, being present with your kids when you're home. In your work, what constitutes like a breakthrough moment? And would you share with us like maybe one breakthrough moment that you had with a client over the last decade?
Yeah. So breakthrough moments are quite interesting, right? I take every opportunity because, right, some people says breakthrough moment and then they're like, okay, so then they're fixed, right? It's like breakthrough moments may just be like a checkpoint in climbing that mountain. It may not be reaching the peak, right? It may just be getting to base camp free, right? So, to speak about a particular breakthrough moment, I would say, I think would be difficult, but I think in general, it's when one of my clients or my clients have awareness. It's when then they can show insight and awareness to maladaptive behaviors and understand how a negative thought pattern is self-deprecating. I think that would constitute a breakthrough with me and my clients is when a kid can say, I understand that thinking that way is not helping me in any way. Because I think once you have that awareness, once a person can become aware of something that is maladaptive, I think that's where so much power comes into play, because inevitably we do have control. As little control as we may feel like we have more control than I believe we tend to give ourselves credit for.
And I think that's great. Is there one experience that you feel like you can kind of with like any clients recently or over the years that
I
just
mean,
sticks out to you?
yeah, I have an older client who has I believe, you know 25 or above, which he has expressed just a really lack of social involvement in his life. Relationships have tended to kind of explode in his face. And I think the awareness that he had, that he was able to say, I contributed to that. And I think that was an absolute breakthrough. And so now helping him with where are these coming from? Where is this, like, in these explosions of these relationships and these rupturing of relationships? Like, what role did you play? And I think turning it back on him and holding up that mirror is something that's so important, and it's kind of uncomfortable because essentially you're calling him out. Well, what did you do? Because it's not just everybody around you. It's, well, what can you own here? Because you got to own it. You got to own it. And so, yeah, I mean, there's some confronting, in my line of work. But yeah, it's great to be a part of those experiences because they happen quite frequently in therapy. You don't just have breakthroughs and then you're done, right? Like I said, it's like you could have multiple breakthroughs over an extended period of time.
What's something that you wish more people knew about the process of therapy?
Well, I guess it's completely different for each individual person and each individual therapist, right? You're going to have a therapist who's an X's and O's type of person where when this happens, try this, right? And then you're going to have someone like me who's literally going to be using physical contact, right? As I said before, physical contact showing that you really care, right? So I think what people need to understand is that there's different types of therapists, and as a therapist, if I meet with somebody and we don't feel like it's a right fit, I don't want them to waste their time. Listen, I'm in therapy. I've had therapists. I know how exhausting it can be to open up that can of worms, right? And
You're not doing that to 3 different people in a month. Like, it's just not happening.
no.
Yeah.
No. So, I mean, it's definitely, and then that could be the very frustrating part of trying to find a therapist is knowing who's going to be the best fit for you. But it's a journey, man. That's how I describe it. It's a journey. It's a journey, and you got to find the right person. Someone once said something to me, that really kind of resonated with me, is that some people need medication to function in life, right? Some people just need a relationship, and that's their medication. Some people just need someone to know that they believe in them and support them in that way. And that's the medication that they need in life. So finding your therapist, being patient, but also being honest with yourself if you don't think that it's going to be a good fit.
Yeah. That's great.
Yep.
One book or podcast that's changed your perspective recently?
Oh man. I gotta say I'm big into Andrew Huberman. He's a good dude. He's a good dude. He's a smart dude. He teaches you that a lot of the things that can help you in life are free. You know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something where, he's not trying to sell nothing. And that's what I love. I love that he's not trying to sell anything. One of his biggest things is low angle sunlight, to get that early morning sunlight into your eyes, to improve your mood, set your circadian rhythm.
Second person today said that.
Yeah. Andrew Huberman, with breath work, how you can physically slow your heart rate down in moments, right? You know how many times I've had clients that are like, I hate it when people tell me to take deep breaths, and it's just like, science actually.
Yeah, it's the science there. Yeah.
It's science of it, which yes, will literally, some kids don't want to get calmed down, right? And then we got to find that's a whole nother.
Let's just throw in the boxing match. Go to war.
Yeah, right.
Get all that. The testosterone.
Or chop some wood.
Chop some wood.
Because that's a great way to outlet some of the physical frustrations, physical urge. But yeah.
Because I think that's important too. And I don't want to keep it too long, but like, it's okay to have feelings. It's okay to be angry. But you need a positive outlet to get rid of that anger. It's not always going to be deep breaths. But teenagers don't have the capacity to think beyond the anger sometimes because their brains are still developing. And it's so hard, I imagine, as a parent or a leader or a teacher or in your, like, even in our shoot, like as PTs or in a mental health role to redirect when there's a lot of emotion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a quote. I know I'm skipping ahead a little bit.
Is this the quote that you live by?
I don't know that I live by it, but it's impactful.
Okay.
I think my wife would say otherwise, that I live by it.
Okay.
But it's one that takes into good practice. That quote is, between a stimulus and a response, there is a space. And that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. All right. So like you said, anger, right? I just had a session with a kid 2 weeks ago where I asked him, what type of music do you like? He was in my car. We were about to go to 99 to grab a burger. I said, what music do you like? I don't know. So I had XM. So I was like, do you like EDM? Do you like rock? Or do you like rap? And I put on all these different stations for him. And he's like, yeah, I like the rock. I like the EDM. I don't like the country. So I said, I used to listen to EDM before hockey games when I was younger. And I said, it would pump me up. I said, you're in control of that. And, you know, it's a long drawn out conversation, but inevitably the conversation came to anger is a choice. Like I just said, between a stimulus and a response, there is a space. So essentially we came to the agreement that anger is a choice that we allow ourselves, either allow ourselves or not allow ourselves to feel. And we can respond in whatever way we want to. But there lies the growth that we've learned everything from our lives. We learned how our response is going to react or have a reaction towards whoever's in our vicinity. So it's a choice. It's a choice, man. And, you know, I'm thinking like back in the day, and you can think back, like, what if a man like myself came to your house at 10 years old and started talking to you about feelings? Right? Like, I'd be like, why am I doing this with him? Like, it's funny because I played hockey, like I said. I was a little bit of an enforcer, right? I like to bang bodies. I've been told I have a very serious face.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I try not to make it too serious, but I've been told I have a very serious face. So I think it's empowering for a kid. And I have a little bit of a highlight clip of me banging bodies in high school. And I lead with that, right? I show kids how aggressive I can be.
Yeah.
Or how aggressive I was back in the day. And then when they see me and they hear me talking and they hear that I'm a crier, I cry because I'm happy. I cry because I'm sad. Even to this day, yeah, I want the gates to open for them. And I want them to know, like, wow, this dude banged bodies. This dude was the leader in the locker room. Like, it's just emotions. And what I'm experiencing now is that these kids have so much emotions, but it's almost like they need to put a little bit of a lid on it, right? And I'm desperate to show these kids that your emotions is a superpower, right? Some kids who are feelers, right? I'm like, I was a feeler. And because I was a feeler, I got tapped into the music and how it made me feel, how it gave me goosebumps. So it's just, you know, opening this door for these kids that would see me and they'd be like, that guy looks kind of a little mean, a little serious, but he's telling me he cries.
Yeah.
He's telling me that it's okay to feel these feelings and that I don't need to. I mean, we grew up in the 90s, man, where you were a jock, you were a meat stick, right? You were like, don't cry, don't, you know, be a man, right? And, there's time and a place for that, but I feel like us being raised in that, era, you know, we have now the power to say, hey, that worked for me or that didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And, just helping the kids now these days navigate their issues and their emotions.
Yeah. Well, you know, navigating cell phone screens and navigating and vying for attention. That's how that part is part. Mm-hmm. If you could give every person listening one piece of advice for better mental health, Mark, what would it be?
Yeah, man. The pillars would be sleep, movement, diet, community. And those are the pillars, man. I mean, you lock in on your diet, you make sure you get your sleep, you know, sense of community, man. I mean, having people who care for you, knowing that. It was described to me the other day, trust. What is trust, right? You think of trust as like a mason jar, and you put marbles into the mason jar, right? When someone does something for you, asks you how's your day, you know, saves you a seat, That's a marble in the jar, right? But you don't trust somebody who has a couple marbles in the jar. You trust them when the jar is full, because that trust, when broken, can be pretty detrimental. So like the community aspect plays a big role into it. So, yeah, diet, exercise, sleep, community, man. Those are huge pillars.
I love it. This is great, Mark. Thank you so much. 4 pillars. That's a great takeaway. And yeah, really appreciate your time today, Mark.
Of course, happy to be here.